Okay, first of all, Marcia, I would like to ask you, what is the debt to GDP ratio in Barbados? Can you say? Do you know what is the
I'm going to
um
tell you. I'm going to tell you that in I would say in 2 minutes. But you go ahead
yes.
and I
But for
yes.
those of you who are not aware, yes, Jamaica has been with the International Monetary Fund since 2013 when we signed on to our agreement. Now, before then, Jamaica was 145 percent of debt to GDP, which was one of the highest in the world at the time. And in fact, what happened is that the Jamaican government was unable to pay its debt, and the IMF suggested that we're not going to allow you any other market. We're not going to open any other market to you on the international scene. So Jamaica could not borrow from any other international agencies because the IMF literally, decided to let them to block Jamaica from borrowing from any other international organization. So can you imagine what we were there in 2011, in 2012, expecting that the IMF would have given us a loan. However, we're hearing from the Wall Street Journal, for example, that Jamaica was so indebted that perhaps the IMF should allow us to burn. So that was the sort of rhetoric going around in 2012, 2013, before we signed off on the agreement in 2013 that Jamaica should be allowed to burn because, after all, we are not able to pay, we weren't able to pay our debt. Eventually, the Black Caucus in the United States decided that they would help us. And we were able to ink out an agreement in 2013 with our debt standing at 145 then percent to GDP. Now, the fact of the matter is that after that time, we were able, through the strictures of the International Monetary Fund, because Jamaica received, and I want your audience to understand, the most austere IMF program that we call the Structural Adjustment Program in the history of the IMF. And there was a paper that was written by the Center for Economic and Policy
Hello, everybody. Hoping that you're staying with us. Stay with us. We're having some real challenges, but you stay with us. We're going to make it happen. He's in a whole different country and facing the same challenge. But he asked me the question of what is the Barbados debt to GDP, and it is about 104%. We're at approximately 105% of GDP is public debt. All right, and based on what it is supposed to be. I mean, we're obviously in a place where there's serious concern, right? Our current debt to GDP ratio is over 100%. So this is a serious concern for us. And there are various reasons for that. Let me just see if he's going to be able to come back in. Yes, I think he is.
Yes.
Hi,
Yeah.
Andrew. We are back
Yeah,
in.
sorry
We're
about
back.
that. I apologize for that sort of break in
Yes, keep
transmission.
going. Yeah,
Yes. So I
I
was
don't know if you heard. I told you about the debt to GDP ratio, which is over 100, almost 105%.
Yes. It's a over 105%. But
Yes.
so contextualize that now that when did you sign when you signed on to the agreement with the National Monetary Fund, that's Barbados, what was the debt at that time? Ours was 1,445. That's 145% to GDP in
Mhm.
2012 thereabout, or
Mhm.
2013 when we signed off on the agreement. Yours is now standing, you're saying, at 105.
Yes.
But when you signed onto the agreement, what was it? Do you know?
Right. I'm gonna check on that for you. Okay.
Right.
Yes.
So what we're seeing now in 2013, Jamaica was 145, and then we were the most stringent. I remember now reading several articles from many American sources which suggested that the IMF wanted mere motley, just like Jamaica, to sign off on agreement to a primary surplus of 6.5%, which would have been also very high. 6.5 primary surplus is a very high thing to sign off on. Now, Mia Motley protested, and she said that she could not do that. And they eventually lowered the primary surplus. But think about Jamaica running a primary surplus of 7.5. And that was on until I think 2016, when Andrew Holness came into power. Now, by that time, we were able to reduce the debt to GDP ratio from 145 to about 116% to GDP by the time Andrew Holness got into power in 2016 during his first term, his first administration. Now, since then, think about that. We have now lowered the debt from 145 in 2013 to now 68% of GDP. So what we have been focusing on in Jamaica since 2013 to 2025 is just the lowering of our debt. But the question is, if we're
So,
just lowering
Andrew,
debt,
Andrew, if I can ask, so your
yes,
Jamaica's debt to GDP ratio is 68%?
yes, now we
It's
have
now
moved from.
68.
But what you must understand, Marcia, is that when they're just telling us to lower debt, we have to divert funds away from the social programs such as healthcare, such as education, the development of infrastructure, and poverty.
Mhm.
And we have
Ah,
not been able to do that. So what they tell us is that lower your debt, but at what cost? Because you're not
mhm.
investing in education, you're not investing in hospitals. So right now, the Jamaican hospital infrastructure is in a very deplorable condition.
So I
Because we
want to
have,
I want to make sure I understand this. So Jamaica has lowered its debt to GDP ratio,
yes,
but at a grave cost because the social service, it basically destroyed the social fabric of the country,
correct.
in lowering the debt. And right now Barbados is at 105% to GDP. So in order to lower that, you're saying basically what I'm inferring from what you're saying is that
Mhm.
we're going to have to, our the social fabric of the country is going to be destroyed in order to lower the debt.
Correct. It is going to decay. That is for sure. What I've always said, though, and I've always commended Barbados having done before inking out that agreement, is that you guys have always had a strong social safety network in your country. For example, isn't education free up to university level in Barbados?
Yes, the
Is it?
education is free up to
Correct.
university level. Now, what can we let's say something here? What has
Yes.
happened? It's at this moment is that we're seeing the quality of the education,
Okay.
Andrew, is really declining. So you have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of parents who are turning to private institutions. A lot of our
Mm-hmm.
schools are not functioning. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of times, the what they call the plant, they're breaking
Mm-hmm.
down.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers are underpaid. So we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing, I think we're starting to feel the impact of the IMF on our
Mm-hmm.
education system. We're feeling that right now in Barbados.
Correct, because even in Jamaica, for example, I think I don't have the stats here, but in terms of the literacy rate in Jamaica, it has regressed. And the teachers in the secondary school system, they are suggesting that many of their students are coming from high school, from primary school, not being able to read. There was a particular high school, for example, in Jamaica, I think it's in Portland, right? And the principal said that out of his batch of 121 seventh graders, 90 of them could not read. 90 of these students could not read. So it means, therefore, that the government, because of the strictures of the IMF, was not able to provide the resources to the teachers to have them teach our students. In fact, Jamaica right now ranks second in the world in terms of brain drain. I don't know if your audience knows that.
Yeah.
We are second in the world. Our
Second in
nurses
the
are
world.
leading.
And I want to stop you there because as
Yes.
Barbadians are listening, I want them to be aware of just the fact that we're actually seeing these changes happening right before our eyes, Andrew,
Yes.
right
Yes.
here in Barbados. I want Bajans to track in with what Andrew is saying. We
Hmm.
are ignore the technical issues, guys, and let us kind of focus in because you spoke about the reading level. For
Yes.
the first time, we are seeing students in the last, I
Hmm.
would say, 5 6 years
Yes.
graduating from secondary schools in Barbados and not being able to read. In fact, it was just
Correct.
reported that they did some research on young men in prison, and they said
Hmm.
majority of them. Oh, I can't remember the percentage. If somebody could put it in the comment section, who was able
Yes.
to read above the 3-year-olds, preschool.
Mm-hmm.
So we are seeing, do you understand what I'm saying, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're literally living what you are speaking about. We're living
Yes,
that in Barbados.
correct. But our citizens are, what they have done, the IMF essentially has done. And you and I understand, even as a mother, I'm sure, Marcia, that debt is debt can be good and debt can also be destructive. So it's destructive in the sense that, as I've told my audience on Rumination with Andrew, that if I'm borrowing money, I should have a vision, and I'm getting debt. I'm going to have to, take on a debt. I should have a vision of where my business is going. The Jamaican government, for example, it says that it's lowering its debt, but there is no vision in terms of after the debt has been lowered, or what is the cost? What cost what sacrifices do you have to make in order for the debt? So I always say, for example, if you have a child and you are going and you owe some money to the bank, and you are going to forego the education of your child or your children so you can pay down the debt, and they're not eating, they're not educating themselves, you're not investing in your children. After you have paid down that debt and they've grown up, what's going to happen to them? And that is what is happening to Jamaica now. So we have all of this debt that we say that we have lowered, but at the same time, the social deprivation that we see in Jamaica, and our government now is now gaslighting the people. That is not because it's not because of the IMF. It is you, Andrew Holness, is suggesting to Jamaicans that you are the ones not seeing the prosperity. The prosperity is there, and they're just reading IMF, rhetoric, and reading from the narratives that come from them, the hymn book, and they're just saying to the people that you are the ones. We have done everything that we are supposed to do to lower the debt. Another thing I always say, and I'm not sure if Barbados they're having that discussion, who racked up the debt? That is my question. It is not the people. How did in Jamaica, for example, Jamaica has never had free education up to university level. I think only it was short-lived during Michael Manley's time. Afterwards, we've always had to pay for education, for everything that we do there. So if we have not had those free social safety benefits, why was the debt up to 145% of GDP? Poor roads, a poor education infrastructure, and just about everything is collapsing in Jamaica. Yet still we fool our people by telling them that the debt was high and we have to pay down the debt. But I've always asked the question, whose debt is it? And I always say it's the debt of the elites. And we have to pay down their debt, the debt that they have racked up, the money that they have stolen from the people, and that we have to pay back that debt. And that is something that is unfair. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if Barbadians have a similar impression.
Well, Jacqueline, I mean, it's a similar situation, very much
Mhm.
similar. Jacqueline, Aline is saying something very important, which I don't know if you know about this yet, but
Mhm.
she's saying it's all part of the system. We keep doing the same thing. Um,
Correct.
every blessed
Correct.
thing we need to change what we do. But there is another thing here. Someone said, oh, Izzy says here the local debt write-offs such as the NIS. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because the government, what they did, they put their hand in our NIS. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and what they did, they wrote it off. You
Yes.
know, you remember that, yeah. And they're
Well,
saying that is at our expense, yeah.
it's interesting that you said that because as you said, the NIS in Jamaica, we have, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, Marcia, the NH, the National Housing Trust, that's the NHT, right? This was
Mhm,
a sort of safety network for those who were not able to buy homes that Manley himself developed, right?
mhm,
And during this IMF agreement, the IMF actually went to Jamaica with an audacious face. And between both administrations, JLP and PNP, they sacked that NHT that is for poor people to build houses, for the government to build houses for poor people, $14 billion.
mhm.
$14 billion. They just went and took it and say, oh, you have to pay down your debt. And they went and they decided that they were going to just take the debt. And the government did not go to the people and say, do you really want us to do this? They just did it and told us that that is what they had to do.
Wow. So it's a
You know,
similar thing. Barbadians listening, Andrew, every now and again, I will stop you a minute. This is so awesome. I will
Mhm,
stop you a minute because I want to Barbadians, as he is speaking, I want you to think about about Jamaica, about as he's speaking of Jamaica. I want you to
mhm,
think about Barbados, and this is why I'm going to say this right now. This is why Frondel Stewart, or the former prime minister, Andrew, did not
mhm.
want us to go to the IMF because
Yes.
they understood what was going to the cost to Barbados. And
Mhm,
per letter is saying, I was afraid of what he's describing would occur in Barbados as a result of paying off the debt as opposed to educating our children. So
mhm.
right now, they're telling us, oh, the debt is decreasing, but at what cost?
At what
What about our,
cost?
yeah, the social system? I
Yes.
think Apostle Scantlebury is here, and he has to just give me a thumbs up. I will bring him in a couple minutes. I know he's listening to the conversation, and he will come in and join us. But
Mhm.
continue, please continue. This is amazing. Folks, are you sharing and liking?
Yes.
Barbadians,
And
everybody, please share and like. Very, very important. Keep going, sir.
there was a doctor who went to Jamaica from the United States, and normally they go there to just, help people and give, charitable services, render charitable services there to the children, the Children's Hospital in Kingston. And when he went there, he was there to conduct some surgery free of cost. Free of cost, Marcia. He was there to conduct this surgery on these children. And basic equipment were not there. Jamaica did not have the most basic equipment that a hospital should have. And he was commenting, he said, how can you allow the doctors that have traveled from so far, who are willing now to, conduct these surgeries free of cost, and you don't have these basic facilities? Why? Because we don't have the money, because the IMF, has diverted these funds that we could have spent on healthcare and on education and other important amenities and things in Jamaica on them. And if you don't do what they tell you to do, they are going to take the government out. The government is out. Because I don't know if you know that in 2008, when we had the financial meltdown in Jamaica, Bruce Golding was the one in office. So Jamaica's always been very skeptical. That's why I'm very, very shocked at how we are very now open to IMF and what they're doing. In 2008, we were very skeptical of the IMF, because there were chatterings and rumors that the IMF, we would have to go back to the IMF because what was happening during the financial meltdown in 2008. Now, when the IMF came in and they told Bruce Golding what he had to do in terms of lowering the debt, he could not really go to the people and do what they told him to do. It was too
Mm.
austere. It was too
What did
challenging.
they ask? So this is Bruce
They were
Golden.
asking him to lower the to decrease the population, the employment, the people who are employed. They wanted him to reduce that and to send people home. And he told them he couldn't do that because the public sector, they said that in order to reduce the debt, he should get rid of a lot of the public sector workers. right? So lots of
Wow.
teachers, lots of nurses, lots of other people who work in the public sector would have been fired. He could not have done that because he realized that the people would have revolted. So he was dilly-dallying with them. You know what they did? They went away and said, okay, you don't want to do that. And then afterwards, we got a distraction with Dodus, the Christopher Dodus situation. And we found now that Dodus became a challenge to Bruce Golding-led administration, in which Hillary Clinton actually went down there and told him that he had to go. He had to demit
Yeah.
office, right? And so he left, and then the IMF came, and we were there, and they were just saying, oh, we don't care, because Jamaica did not want to, they aborted their IMF agreement. So what happens if Mia Mottley, for example, decides that she's not going to follow the strictures of the IMF, the austerity of the IMF? They are going to create distractions for her and might even remove her from office, create situations in which she is removed from office so that another person can come in and do
Wow.
what they
To do
want.
what they want to do.
Right. The question we need to ask, Apostle, who is receiving this money? Is the money really being received by these governments, or are the elites getting them, and they're the global elites and also the domestic elites, and then they're telling us that that is our money, it's our debt, but it's not really our debt because we are not benefiting from the money, as you're saying.
Right. Yeah. Well, the other part that yeah, sorry.
You mentioned the point in terms of the leaders, and that is a very critical point you raised. What can the leaders do? Because as I suggested to you, Bruce Golding, he gave him his credit. He did stand up to the IMF and told them that he wasn't able to reduce the public sector employment because he knew that there would have been a revolution in Jamaica. But the IMF created this distraction, and which caused him to have demitted office. So that is what they do too. If leaders stand up to them, then they are going to get you out of office.
Turn around and bite them in the behind. And I think, unfortunately, so much of it has already taken place that it's pretty hard right now to pull it back. So we have to be very careful here in the Caribbean right now.
You mentioned something that is critical, Apostle. And the fact is that our democratic state is no longer democratic. First of all, the IMF is not a democratic institution. The IMF and the World Bank, they tell you what they want, and you have to do it, or you suffer the consequences. So that is what we have to understand, that the IMF is not a democratic institution. Another thing, because it's not democratic, they don't tell the citizens what they are going to do. Where are the memoranda of understanding? We don't know where they are. Like Jamaica says that it's 68, it has reduced its debt to 68% of GDP, but we don't see a memorandum of understanding. So we are just hearing what they're telling us, but we don't have any evidence, any concrete evidence that they are doing, or this is the real agreement. Nobody really knows. That is what the media tells us, and we just accept it, and that is a problem.
Exactly. I mean, many times you would hear the government just received another $150 million US dollar loan from the IMF. You never hear the government is approaching the IMF. You never hear this is what the money will be going towards. You just hear that they got this money.
Yes.
Okay. And to me, if Barbados just became a republic, and from the definition of a republic is that the power is given to the people, and to individuals.
Without the constitution.
So where's the power
without
of the people?
Constitution. Yeah.
Well, without a constitution. So I really
so
don't
there's
know
no
how
power
we got
to the
here,
people. Without a constitution, there's no power. In fact, I was saying on my program that Mia Mottley is ruling by decree, because if you have no constitution, then she is ruling by a decree. The people should have risen up and said, we cannot be governed without a constitution. Even the United States, it cannot be governed without a constitution. It has to have a constitution if it's going to be a republic.
It's to be masquerading that we are a republic without a constitution.
Absolutely.
Who does that?
That is what Jamaica is trying to do also, and I think that is what Jamaica is trying to do also. But I think that it's more complicated there for them to do that. I don't see how they are going to do that. But I think the pandemic, Mia Mottley was very skillful, and she used the pandemic as a way of pushing it through. Maybe if Jamaica had done that, maybe they would have gotten through to. But right now, unless there's a pandemic or some emergency, it's going to be very difficult for them to impose that republic. The people want it. I think most people want the country to be transformed into a republic, but they don't want the fact that there won't be any constitution and other things that come with the republic.